Hey guys, you're watching Just Hoop Talk podcast on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and to our podcast on all streaming platforms. Hey, what's going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of Just Hoop Talk, Eastern Conference Edition. You're with Justin Henry, Will Thompson. Will, East Coast basketball. We're going to talk it today. You ready?
Yeah, man. I was just thinking about this too just a few seconds ago. I'm so happy to be talking about basketball, man. Like, we actually talking about games and stuff, and like good games and good competition. So I'm ready, man.
Yeah, it's been an interesting first round, man. We still got 3 more rounds left of this, dude.
Yeah.
This bubble playoff it's been really exciting. And one of the storylines that I'm really intrigued by is just the play of these young Celtics, man. They've kind of turned that corner as to team like we know what they have with Kemba, with Gordon Hayward. Actually, he's out right now, but we know, that core is there. But watching this duo, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, man, they look like the real deal, and a scary thought even for like the Raptors and for the Bucks there at the top of the conference. What's your thought on this dynamic duo? Are they the next dynasty? Are they for real?
Man, I've been thinking a lot about Jason Tatum because early on in the year I was really high on him, and I still really like him. I like his game a lot. But sometimes I watch him and I'm like, that dude isn't a superstar to me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm by myself in this, but yeah, I like his game, but I don't feel like he gets good shots. You know what I mean? Like, he's a tough shot maker, but I just don't see him getting good shots on a consistent basis. But I like his game. I personally like Jaylen Brown more than I like Jason Tatum.
Huh?
I know.
Why's that?
Like, this dude is tripping. I like Jaylen Brown's shot selection more than I like Jason Tatum's, and I like him defensively more than I like Jason Tatum. And I think he's a difference maker for that team. Like, when he plays well, they play really well. When he doesn't play well, like, you'll see that they struggle because Jason Tatum, like, he gets all the accolades and the big highlights, and it looks great because he's shooting the step back threes and all that stuff. That looks really cool. But when it comes down to it, like, he's like, Jaylen Brown is a dude in the trenches, in the dirt, getting it done, getting the good buckets, putting the good shots up. I want you guys, everybody out here is like tripping, like, this dude is crazy. Like, watch the games, watch Jason Tatum's shot selection, and watch how many times you're like, what is that, bro? Like, and when he's making a shot, it looks good, right? It looks cool.
Yeah, it looks good, bro. Man.
He can bury it. He can bury them when he's taking bad shots, though. And we've seen it so many times before. I don't know if it's gonna pop up again in this series.
I don't know, man. I gotta cut you off there, bro. I agree 100% with you. I think that Jaylen Brown is a very, very underrated piece. That's why he got paid in the offseason, but he's a truly underrated piece, and he brings that defensive tenaciousness that any team needs that's going to make a long run in the playoffs. And I think I used to share a very similar sentiment about Jason Tatum that you did, is that he takes tough shots, and that, he kind of seems like the skill set, like there's not a lot more room for growth, really.
Right.
It kind of seems like that, but it does sound a lot like his favorite player, Kobe Bryant. It sounds a lot like him. He takes bad shots, but he makes them. They're tough shots for a lot of people, but he can make them. And those step-back threes, like we've seen Harden, we've seen Luka, it's kind of becoming a shot that's not a bad shot anymore. Getting game winners. Lillard's hit a game winner on step-back threes. I don't know. I think that you're right in that Jaylen Brown, his level, people are putting him – they're not giving him the love that he deserves as a player. He's a superstar in this league, and I think the NBA talent around would know that. But I also think that Jason Tatum does have that elite-level capability, and on the surface as a player, you're like, man, he's just – it doesn't seem like it. It seems like it's maxed out. But I think he has that it factor that you can't really teach in hoop.
That's what I see a lot of times too, which frustrates me with him, because I'm like, that's a bad shot. Like, no, but he's making these shots, and I'm like, he can't keep. Like, I feel like if I was a coach, I'd be like, yo, dude, what are you doing? But if he keeps making these shots, you're just like, well, I guess just keep shooting them. So he keeps proving me wrong, bro. Like, I can't lie. Like, every time
he reminds me a lot of like Donovan Mitchell too. I kind of think the same thing about him. He takes a lot of shots. I'm like, man, there's no way he can sustain that level of play with his ability. But it's like, I think when some players just have that it factor, it kind of changes the dynamic. And I mean, you could be right 100%. It may like kind of disappear. You may see Jalen start to overtake some of that. Yeah. But I don't know, man. The way he's playing, this playoff run really will define, I think, his legacy in Boston.
That's so true. This is a huge year for them, the two of them together with Kemba. And they got another draft pick somehow, bro. Like,
yeah, man.
Like, speaking and talking about the dynasty, like the main question that you asked, like,
yeah,
it's hard to see them having a losing season for a very long time, for sure, man.
It is.
For sure.
Well, I mean, they beat up on a team that just, Ben Simmons was out, obviously. They beat up on a team that just they did what they were supposed to do, and that's what you expect from players like Tatum and Brown, is to really elevate when the time is right, and you sense a weak opponent, you go hard.
Yeah, speaking of beating up on a team, Philly just got swept away, man. Be honest, is the process over in Philadelphia?
The process is done. They were 2 years away from being 2 years away. They had it, and they were planning with Embiid, sit the year out. Ben Simmons sit the year out. We're going to be a championship team. And, the process was started. Even his name, Embiid, he named himself the process, and that's ended. Do a 180 Embiid now. Like, I think this whole Sixers organization needs to do a 180. I think they started the right way. And that was going to be building through Ben Simmons. And what they did was, I think they retracted that. And because Ben Simmons wasn't shooting, they started trying to build through Embiid, who I think has the bigger heart for that team. But it's probably a better situation to build around Ben Simmons and shooters in today's NBA. You see it with Giannis. You see it with the way that these teams are setting up. And I think they got in their mindset. They're like, you know what? We got to surround Embiid to become more of a defensive, gritty team, get more shot creators instead of just shooters. And I think you saw a little bit of switch in Philly, and that's why you sense the inconsistency. I mean, coming into this playoff run, I thought that they had a really good chance to make a deep run with, of course, a healthy Ben Simmons. Yeah. But obviously, we were wrong about that one. And, I mean, the process, the coaches got to go. I think there's going to be a big trade, possibly GM move. Process isn't looking too good in Philly right now, my man.
You know what's interesting about both of those players is they both didn't play their rookie seasons, and they both kind of had like injury issues coming into them being drafted,
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they hitched their wagon to two dudes who had a history of being injured. And it's really that's really been is what shut the process down, Like we really haven't seen both of those guys in their prime making a deep playoff run. And this was kind of the year we thought like, okay, we're sure we're going to see it. We're going to see if this really works or not. But I think you're right, man. Like, I feel like they just kind of shifted towards building around Embiid instead of just focusing on Ben Simmons. If you look at the league and the way teams are playing now, to try to build around a big man is almost impossible. You look at Ben Simmons, you look at how he's built in his skill set. You kind of look at the Bucks and look at what they've done with Giannis, and you think like, hey, just lean into that, like let this guy get downhill, beat people off the dribble, get to the basket, finish strong, get fouled, and move Embiid somewhere else where he can, I don't know, stand outside and shoot threes. I don't know, man. Well, but I think that's where they really lost track of this whole thing.
And it's tough because you recognize the talent and you know that Ben Simmons isn't always on the floor. So, like, if he's not always on the floor, we got to have a system that's also built around Embiid, and especially he's probably the more dominant personality in the locker room. But then you get Ben Simmons, who's not going to necessarily be able to play that way, and that's why you sense that friction between the two. Like, that's not – obviously, the team was – you could tell that they were trying to build around Ben Simmons for the long term. And Embiid, when they switched, when they made a move to get Al Horford, when they made the move to get Tobias Harris, instead of keeping around a JJ Redick, you drafted Thibault instead of drafting another shooter. Like, those are some of the moves that you turn into a little bit more gritty team, but now you've eliminated one of your best threats with Ben Simmons. It kind of neutralized the whole situation there. And when you consistently make moves like that, as we're seeing with the Kings, when you consistently make moves that kind of contradict previous moves, it never turns out well, man.
Right. The process doesn't end when you make two draft picks, right? The moves that you make around those two draft picks will help those two draft picks succeed. And you're right, like getting rid of JJ Redick, like to stretch the floor for them doesn't help them at all. Like Matisse Thybulle is a great defender. Like he's a great pickup. but he doesn't shoot the ball at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like all those moves kind of just brought the process to a halt. And hey, I mean, honestly, and I think about it too, like as much as like I look at them and look like, damn, they got a mess over there. Like looking at it compared to what we have here in Sacramento, hey, we take that all day, man. We take some playoff losses over just nothing. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, and it's I think that's the part is that you can't really you can't fault them because I think that they have good talent on the roster. Like you trade Jimmy Butler and you get a Josh Richardson. Okay, you up the defense a little bit. You lose a closer and you lose some shooting. It's like he's good talent. Tobias Harris, good talent. It just I think it just didn't all mesh well together, man. And it's in the East, especially, like there's just some teams that really, really gel. Like we talked about earlier, the Celtics. There's just teams that really gel with the talent, and you got to be able to have that. And speaking of another team that's really like gelling talent-wise, I think we've been sleeping on these guys, man. The Toronto Raptors, the defending champions.
Yeah.
No love in the NBA community, man. Probably one of the top defensive teams in the league. And you look at where Kawhi is right now with the Clippers, and you're wondering, man, did he make the right choice going to the Clippers instead of staying with the Raptors? Yeah. Are we sleeping heavy on the Raptors, bro?
There's no question we're sleeping on the Raptors. I think it's part of it is their matchup too right now. Like it's just not super intriguing watching them play Brooklyn. Brooklyn's a decent team. They play hard. They play well together.
Man. That was an easy move for them, man.
It wasn't really like interesting at all to watch those games. I watched a little bit of some of them, but those were easy to tune out of. So they've kind of gotten lost in the shuffle of all these like really great matchups. But I think you just can't sleep on a team that's number one, the defending champion has a majority of their team back and has guys playing this year better than they were playing last year, which is really crazy. Like Fred VanVleet is playing really well, man. And then Pascal Siakam's playing really well too. They got a solid bench. They look solid top to bottom. They play defense. They execute offensively. They're going to be tough to beat. Like you think like, oh, they're not as talented as this team, but like somebody has to go out there and beat them though. And they're tough to beat, man. So that'll be really interesting to see them moving forward for sure.
The crazy part is like they had DeRozan and they moved him for Kawhi. It's like taking both of those pieces, whether it's a DeRozan or a Kawhi off, and they're still going to make a deep playoff run more than likely. I mean, you got to give Kawhi, you got to give Kyle Lowry his props. You got to give obviously VanVleet his props. Siakam, obviously, but then they go deep, man. And you talk about like career resurgence for Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, just players that aren't really getting love. And then you even go down to some of like their lower end G League, bottom of the, back end of the draft type picks. And you got like OG Anunoby, Norman Powell, like guys who are coming in making a huge difference off the bench. It's like, how do you stop that when they're so deep? They're literally 8 deep with all their positions. And it's like, that's a tough out. And they got people on their bench like Chris Boucher. Like they got talent that could be starting or potentially be, heavy role players on other teams, not even getting burned right now in the playoffs, man.
Yep. Terrence Davis is another guy who they've done such a great job building a culture. Obviously, what's his name? Nasai Ujiri?
Yes.
DM? Yeah. Obviously, he's done a great job just building a solid culture there. And, they just – it seems like they just plug and play, man. Like one guy goes down, one guy leaves, somebody gets hurt. Nothing changes. Like they stay consistent. They play a certain way. Nick Nurse is coach of the year now. So props to him for that. That's huge. So yeah, I think the culture is a huge part of what they do there. And it's weird to see like how do teams develop culture? Like I've always wondered that, like how do teams develop this positive culture? We saw that even with the Spurs in the bubble this year, right? Like somehow that towards the end of the year they always play well. Who's that? Oklahoma City has a great culture. Like some of these franchises, like I maybe it starts at the top with ownership. I don't know, but the Raptors for sure have a positive culture, man. Like
you can tell just like some of those teams, bro. Like some of them, obviously great structure at the top, but you start to get those culture teams when you take away like the superstar players, the big name, we're making max contract. But I don't know, maybe that's not true because the Warriors also have a good culture too.
Yeah,
But a lot of times when it's homegrown talent and there's not like, hey, we brought this guy in to take over. I guess when KD came in, that's when the culture problem started. So I think that could be, a big topic. And when you start to pull those big names away, especially in like the smaller markets, you pull the big names away. It's like, now we're all here to play. We're all here to win. We're not catering to one person or another. In those homegrown teams, man, they're pretty dangerous in the playoffs. I think the Raptors are more due for a run than we think, even going against, Celtics, Bucks, whoever's in the East.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Bucks, man, they haven't looked particularly well, and I think they got a tough matchup coming up in the next series against the Heat, man, because the Heat have the second round locked in. What do you think about that matchup? How do you feel? Like, do you think the Heat legitimately have enough? Because the Bucks haven't looked great so far, right? They look good, but not great. Do the Heat have enough to overtake the Bucks in the second round this year?
Yeah, and I think as the Bucks finish off the Magic, it's like, that they gave them fits that first round. Obviously, they came out flat. But I think the Bucks are one of those teams that, like, I don't know. I just don't know if they have the it when it comes down to it. Like, what Giannis is going to get. What the supporting cast is going to do. But when it gets down to it, like, when I look at the Heat, they're gritty top to bottom. And I know when clutch time comes, we got Jimmy Butler to hit a clutch 2, a clutch 3, make a clutch free throw. When I look at the Bucks, I'm like, okay, if Giannis gets locked up, are they deep enough really to score like any other team? Or if it gets down to crunch time, outside of a trip to the lane, I mean, Giannis is shooting a lot more now, but is he really a big shot maker? We haven't seen him really in a role where he had to make a super, super tough shot in the clutch to win a game here in these playoffs. So I'm interested. I think there's some of me that wants to say, yeah, I think the Bucks they're the best team in the East. They're legit. Mm-hmm. But I think when these, playoffs come around, it's a whole different ball game, and the playing field's a lot more even than people realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest concern for me with the Bucks has been Chris Middleton. Like, he hasn't looked like himself, and he has to be that legit second scorer to back up Giannis, because without that, they don't look incredible. And like, the Heat play really well defensively, so I think Bam Adebayo is not the best matchup, but he's a good matchup for Giannis. Obviously, you can't stop Giannis, you can't shut him down, but Bam has size, he has length. They have a lot of guys there in Miami that have size, length. Andre Iguodala is definitely going to be matched up on Giannis, so they're going to give him a hard time. And somebody else for the Bucks has to be able to step up. And all the other guys have been really consistent for the Bucks, whether it's Eric Bledsoe, George Hill. Those guys really haven't stepped up yet in the playoffs so far. In the Heat, their other guys are playing well. Tyler Hero is playing well.
Yeah.
Duncan Robinson's playing well. So they look like, I think that's going to be a long series. I honestly do.
Yeah, I do too. And I think the one thing about the Heat is that it seems like their guys are stepping up to the occasion, and it's like the Bucks are almost coasting right now.
There you go.
Because even when you see like a Goran Dragic just like start to come out of, like, I'm ready to be here, really taking over his role on that team during these playoffs. It's like he stepped up in that time. And when you mention, guys who can guard Giannis or length and size, and you throw out not just Jimmy Butler, not just Iguodala, Jay Crowder, it's like they got the defenders, then they got the shooters.
Yep.
I mean, if they get hot with the shooting, man, that's a tough matchup for any team in the league, not just the Bucks, but any team in the league. And you mentioned, culture a little bit a while ago when we were talking Raptors, bro. The Heat culture is something else too. They all want to win. They all are kind of that grimy, gritty type of team, man. It's like, the Bucks, that could be I don't know. I could see an upset. Can you see an upset? Like, do you really think that the Heat could beat the Bucks?
Absolutely, man. And I look at just two teams trending in totally different directions,
Yeah.
Like, obviously the Bucks, they're getting the job done, but they haven't looked great. The Magic really aren't that great of a team. But I thought that was a good Pacers team. Obviously, they were missing Sabonis, but that was a good Pacers team. And the Heat handled them really well, man. Yeah, like, they play – I mean, they're two really good defensive teams, but the difference was Miami's ability to score and their guys stepping up and scoring and getting buckets. I think Jimmy hurt his shoulder recently, so I don't know how that's going to affect them long term. I don't know if that's something that'll go away hopefully it's something that he can shake off. But yeah, they look great, man. They look really good.
I mean, that remains to be seen, man. And I mean, obviously the Bucks are a 1 seed too, so we can't count them out. But I just think that matchup in general is going to be pretty tough for them. And I mean, obviously we're talking about the East Coast teams. There's a lot of things that could happen in this East Coast, and I think those top four teams, it wouldn't surprise me if any one of them was in the NBA Finals this year, man. Because Raptors, Celtics, Heat, Bucks, you can't really ask for much better than that. You know, shout out to some of those other teams too. The East teams, I feel like, all came to play. Like the Magic, they gave the Bucks what they could handle that first game. I feel like the Nets, even though they got washed by the Raptors, it was like you saw Karis LeVert going in there and kind of doing his thing, man. And even the Pacers, you know, they kind of gutted it out. And you heard Embiid say he didn't want to go home. He didn't want to get swept. They were playing till the end of the buzzer, man. And I think in that game, Tobias Harris even caught a little he got hurt in his eye and still came back out there, man. So the East, everybody says it's weak. I think they're going to toughen up here very soon in the next few years.
There's some good series coming up for sure in the second round, like really intriguing series. The first round, obviously, some, you know, not the best series, but I think the second round is going to be really interesting in the East, man.
Man, can't wait to see and talk about it a little bit more. That does it for this edition of Just Hoop Talk, Eastern Conference edition. Make sure you subscribe, man. We got a lot of views, a lot of listens on our podcast. We are on all podcast platforms. We are on YouTube. And if you have any topics that you want us to discuss during these bubble playoffs, or if there's anybody that you want to see on our podcast, let us know in the comments. Are we wrong about the Celtics? Or do we have the Raptors too much praise, man? Let us know. Argue with us, debate with us. It's all good. Just Hoop Talk, another edition in the books. Peace out. For more NBA, college, and hoops coverage, be sure to subscribe to Just Hoop Talk podcast on YouTube and all streaming platforms.